Hey y'all, it's me again. I'm gonna continue reading from my book, The 1900s. Let's go. The controversy escalates. Ooh. To support to the support of Glavis quickly came Pinchot. His support took the form and part of having some of his subordinates furnish to the newspapers information from the government files, tending to support the charges Glavis had made, tending to reflect on Bollinger and, by this time, inferentially on Taft. When this activity became known, Pinchot wrote a public letter saying that his subordinates broke no law and that words were guilty only the violation of official propriety. Pinchot's action was, of course, flagrant and insubordination. Taft dismissed him from office. Now to the support of both Pinchot and Glavis came Collier's Weekly, many newspapers, practically all the Code of Conservation zealots, as well as Millennius altruists. Collier's printed Glavis's charges under a headline asking, Are the Guggenheims in charge of the Interior Department? Illustrated by giant corporate hand reaching out to seize the nation's heritage. Such journalistic explanations were sufficient extend to a public which never grasped to the end of the case or sense the meaning of clear listing, Lewland's filing, or the other technical intricacies that made up the substance of the charges and the evidence. The conservation zealots demanded that Bollinger be investigated by a committee of Congress. When the committee met, Collier paid a fee of $25,000 to able Boston lawyer and reformer Louis D. Brandeis to represent Glavis and, in general, the forces hostile to Taft. Within the committee, a majority Republican reported that Bollinger was a competent and honorable gentleman, honestly and faithfully performing the duties of his high office with an eye single to the public interest. That the charges against Bollinger appeared to have had their origin in a strong feeling of animosity created by a supposed difference in policy respecting conservation. The minority, Democratic and insurgent Republican, reported otherwise. About everybody agreed that Bollinger was, to put it very mildly, in that state, insecure for a holder of public office in which his usefulness was impaired. Bollinger, 6 months after the report of the committee, resigned. Pinchot took ship for the White Nile to pour out his tale to Roosevelt, who by this time knew that Taft was not expert in administrating the government of the United States. He knew too that Taft was fairly an adequate supporter of Roosevelt's policy. But Roosevelt also knew Pinchot knew the touch of fanaticism in him, his disposition to court martyrdom, and Roosevelt knew the rules of conducting an executive office. Remember his own experiences with Congress. He knew the utter impossibility of having in the executive branch of the government a subordinate who would conspire with men in Congress to embarrass the president. I am not yet sure Roosevelt was a Taft could have followed any course save the one he did. Ouch. Roosevelt's following, however, knowing little and caring less about the question of administrative discipline involved, thought only in terms of conservation and of Pinchot as a disciple of Roosevelt. Conservation, they felt, had been betrayed by Taft. Pinchot humiliated. The Bollinger case was a prominent ring in the downward spiral of Taft's fortune. Taft acts on bad advice. Taft, at this stage, did a thing of the sort that men in desperation sometimes do when they find the strength of the tide running against them too strong for the mental footing. Not Taft so much as his advisors, for it was not in Taft's nature to do a desperate thing. Left to him, he would have let the tide against him go on to whatever fate it might bring him. But some of his advisors suggested that the tide adverse to Taft might be reversed. The progressives placated and the Democrats disarmed by a policy of thoroughgoing prosecution of the trust. The advice coincided with Taft's fundamental conviction that the law, being on the statute books, should be enforced. In this spirit were started a number of antitrust suits which, in the aggregate of all that were prosecuted in Taft's administration, exceeded by far the number prosecuted in Roosevelt's or any other, made the Taft administration the outstanding one in American history for prosecution of trusts. As a spectacular high spot in Taft's prosecution of the trust, his Attorney General George W. Wickersham, on October 26, 1911, filed a suit for dissolution of the United States Steel Corporation, citing as one cause for its being a monopoly its purchase of the Tennessee Coal and Iron Company 4 years before, and alleging that the act of purchasing had included securing approval from Roosevelt, and that Roosevelt's approval had been procured by deceit. That suit against the Steel Corporation, which a reflection upon Roosevelt, while it might seem the solution of one of Taft's present troubles, was the beginning of a future and more serious one, was indeed the most disastrous act of Taft's political career and led to the most calamitous episode in the history of the Republican Party. The people turned against Taft. By the time Taft had been a year in the White House, the fat man jumped about, which, when he was Secretary of War, had been genial and kindly, began to take on a caustic tang. The 1907 jest about Taft being the portliest man I know because he gave up his streetcar to 3 women, now supplanted by the 1910 one about a fat one trying to get off a streetcar because she was stout. She was obliged to go down the steps backward, but at each stop the conductor and the friendly passengers, seeing her face before as soon as she was getting on the car, and by giving her a helpful push, facilitated her progress in the direction she did not want to go, so that she was carried past 4 stops before she could make clear that it was off, not on, that she wanted to go. The very things Taft had done to please the crowd were now criticized. He had sat in the bleachers at a baseball game at Pittsburgh, declining to take a box, and had been praised by the press of the country. He refuses to be exclusive. He is one of the people. He had made tours of the country and journeys from Washington so numerous as to cause him to conclude privately that the major part of the work of a president is to increase the gate receipts of fares. Now in the changed mood of the country, those excursions and his diversions were turned against him. Too much of his time was occupied in pleasure-seeking, attending baseball games in a number of different cities, frequent attendance at theaters, playing golf, and riding around Washington and other places in automobiles. Inevitably, much of the criticism, whether caustic anger or merely gentle jibbing or sad disappointment, took the form of compared to Roosevelt as in, "Dear Teddy, I need you. Come home to me quick. I am worried and weary and worn, and that's hope long deferred only makes the heart sick. I am sadly in need of your potent big stick. So Teddy, please haste your return." Taft recognized the change in the public mood, and though brave about it, was distressed. His family and intimate friends felt as unhappy at the way things were going as Taft himself. "I feel so sorry for him, I could almost cry," wrote a faithful aide. It was a pity, and it was unfair. Taft was not a bad president. He was a good one. He had absolute integrity. Considerably less than Roosevelt would Taft relax the highest standard of public service to name a friend to officer, pay debt to a politician. He was clear-minded and discriminating about men, too, and could on occasion exercise a unique power of characterization. One of the insurgent senators he described as so narrow he could see through a keyhole with both eyes at once without squinting. Far less than most presidents would have practiced hypocrisy. Even the relatively harmless political variety are compromised with it. Anything devious was animal to him. And all the 330 pounds of him, not a pound nor an ounce, nor a ground was deceit. Furtiveness he despised. At his desk, if a politician leaned to whisper to him, task ended, the conversation would rise until the window's pane rattled. Courage he had, too, at all times, the quiet kind, and when roused, the energetic kind. Never did he yield to any organized militia minority. His scorn for that was the chief cause of his downfall. Please rate, comment, and subscribe down below. And please ring that bell notification if you're on YouTube. And if you're on TikTok, please like and follow my videos. And please pay for something from my Mercari and or eBay. Okay, and if you need my information, comment down below. Okay, bye.